Hi everyone, Stepan here. I'm going to show you a game I played last Sunday in the Croatian League. So, as a brief introduction, I was preparing for this game and my opponent, who plays the Tarrasch regularly, plays a move deep in a theoretical variation that's not good. And he's played it several times, 3 or 4 times, and no one has played the critical move against him. So I had very specific preparation, and I had very high hopes for my preparation. So, d4, d5, and you can get into the Tarrasch several different ways, but the most usual way for black to enter it is to play c5 straight away. And and if you remember my last Tarrasch game as white, my opponent played the von Henning-Schara gambit with cd. But in this position, my opponent played ed, and all of this is very, very standard stuff. So knight f3, knight c6, g3. This is basically a Panov-Caro-Kann in reverse, where, you know, if I'll just briefly show you. So if we play a normal Panov-Caro-Kann, then black could easily get this position, where, you know, white plays something, usually takes, and black is going to have a bishop on g7. And if we look at this position here, white's going to have the Panov in reverse. So, excuse me, I have a lot of experience in the Panov-Caro-Kann as black, a bit less in the Tarrasch, but I felt comfortable with this position, and as I said, I had very specific prep. So knight f6, bishop g2, bishop e7, this is all main line. And then in this position, white has a choice. There are two main moves, taking on c5 or playing bishop g5. I played bishop g5. And the idea behind the move bishop g5 is that the pawn on d5 and the pawn on c5 could be loose. So if I just take on f6, then I can take on c5, take on d5 later perhaps. So black's best is to take on d4. White recaptures with the knight on d4. And of course, this is an IQP position, again, very similar to the Panov-Caro-Kann, and this is the position I was referring to. Black plays h6 in 2000 master games. Rook e8 is the alternative. My opponent plays the move queen b6, which is not a good move. And no one has played the critical response against it. It's seemingly a normal move, attacking b2, attacking d4, and my opponents have played knight b3, which is the most common move, or took on c6. But I prepared the best move. Bishop e3. Bishop e3 has only been played 4 times in master games, and on a very low level, because of course no one really good, like top 20 or something, is going to go queen b6. And, well, what do you do here? I'm threatening to take the pawn, so if you don't do anything, then I'll just take the pawn. Also, I have a lot of discoveries with my knight, and you could lose very quickly. So black really should take the pawn on b2. And when I played bishop e3, my opponent stopped and thought for a few minutes, then he played queen b2. And I immediately took on d5. Of course, the reason you sacrifice the b pawn is that you get the d pawn in exchange for that, but you also get massive activity, so takes. And once again, there is no alternative to taking, because I'm just threatening to, you know, take on c6, take on e7. It's just everything is collapsing. So you have to take. And he took pretty quickly. And this was still sort of the beginning of my prep. There are 2 reasonable moves here. Taking on d4 and bishop h3. The engine says knight d4 is the best move. Bishop h3 is a big mistake, after which white is close to winning. Queen a3 is fine. Bishop h3, the engine likes it in the beginning, but then it changes its mind, because you go rook b1, queen a3 is the only move, and now you take on b7. You don't care about the exchange. And the bishop on e7 isn't hanging, the queen defends it. So after something like knight d4, which is the only move, queen d4 now. The a7 pawn is hanging. They grab the exchange, fine, king takes f1. But these 2 bishops are enough to give white a massive advantage. And it's very likely that white's going to have a passed a pawn if not more. So that's one way to play. The way I'd expected him to play was to take on d4, and bishop takes d4. And I mean, you have to move your queen, so you play queen a3 or queen b5. I think queen a3 is better, but okay, let's say queen b5, which also seems fine. And now just e4. And this is the position I was expecting to get. Instead of that, after thinking for about, I want to say half an hour, maybe it was less than that, but it was a very long time, my opponent played a move I haven't expected at all. A move that in my mind makes very little sense. So it's clear that rook b1 is a threat, knight c6 is a threat. You should do something about that. So, you know, take on d4 or whatever. He played queen a3. And I spent 10 minutes trying to figure out whether there was a trap somewhere, or trying to come up with a reason why I couldn't take on c6 and win a clean pawn. I couldn't find anything, so I just took. And it is just a free pawn. And of course, rook b8 is passive, so bishop h3 trading exchanges is better. That's what my opponent played. I took on a8, he took on f1, and now I think I had my longest think of the game. There are two variations worth analyzing. Either king takes f1. I had discarded queen f1 very, very quickly because I want an active queen, or bishop f3. Bishop f3 comes with an upside, which is my opponent needs to waste tempo, moving the bishop back to h3, and a7 isn't well defended because the rook isn't on a8. But king f1, I get to infiltrate with my queen on the very next move because my opponent has to waste the tempo. I did end up playing king f1, which is the best move. And of course my opponent took. And now I'm sad to say I have not invested enough time. And we are going to play this position out against Nocti because I know what the best move is. I just wonder whether a stronger player than my opponent would be able to defend. So before I tell you what I did, I'm going to show you what the correct way to play was. Or I'll try to play that against Nocti. Okay, so let's play this position out against Nocti. This is what I do when I mess something up during a game. So I'll create a new theme. I'll call it Illich Tarrasch. I'll add the FEN for this position. I want to play white, and let's give black maximum strength. Let's call this queen b3 mistake. Let's save the element, let's save the theme. And now what we're going to do is we're going to play this out. So instead of queen b3, which is what I played in the game, as you're going to see, and you're going to see why it was wrong, I think the best move, even though the engine says queen d5 is slightly stronger, I think the best move is queen d7. So Nocti is going to be giving me immediate feedback, and it's also going to be playing the best possible moves. Now, when I did my analysis, I didn't really go deep into the analysis with the engine, so I'll just play like a human would. I think rook c1 is a great move with the idea of rook c7, and I don't really see a downside to this. Okay, queen b7. I just want to create a battery along the 7th rank. Okay, a pink move is great, so that's, you know, that's good. Okay, so this is my idea. It's very simple. I just want to infiltrate on the 7th rank and okay, so we're trading pawns. However, if my opponent takes on a2, I have bishop c5, I think. Wait, this is bad? Why? Interesting. Okay, threatening to win my rook. I didn't even consider that attacks my rook. I may have lost a bit of my advantage, so let's go back. Let's find something better. I need to be more precise. Huh. Queen takes defends f7. That's very annoying. I don't know what to do. I also don't just want to defend my a-pawn. See, it's not that easy. Queen b3 was a bad move, as you're gonna see. I mean, not that black is better, but I lost a massive amount of my advantage. But even though queen d7 seems to be the easiest move, I'm still struggling now. So what do we do? How do I put pressure on f7 without actually losing my a-pawn? Can I try bishop b6? Bishop b6, rook d1 check, king g2. Why did I play bishop b6? There's no reason to go bishop b6. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, if I had this in a tournament game, I bet I would take. So I would just, I would just take. So let's see. So let's try this again. See if Nocti plays the same move again. Now it plays bishop f6. I was hoping it was going to go bishop f6. Because now I think I can go rook d1. Oh no, rook d1, rook d8. Come on. Okay, so let's go... Let's go rook b1. Why? This is a blunder? Okay, I'm just... Why is this such a blunder? I thought this was great for me. Yeah, this isn't great for me. Let's go back. Let's get some ideas. Why is rook c1 so much better than rook b1? I don't understand. Okay, queen d5 makes sense. What's the difference between rook c1 and rook... What if they take again? Am I not supposed to go rook c1? No. Okay. Why? a5 again, so I'm guessing it leads to the same position. What was I supposed to do? Oh, now there's just queen e4. Well, maybe not queen e4. Ah, maybe yes, queen e4, because, yeah, queen e4, f3, queen e3, queen f7, king h8. King h8, I have nothing. Okay, I have to go back. So let's get a hint again. Oh yeah, that does make sense. That makes sense. Why didn't I see rook c8? Wait, that's just it? All right. Wow. Okay, I didn't even see rook c8. So wait, it was this easy? Okay, so this is what I do with Noctis themes. As you can see, I have a bunch of them. Obviously, this position is important to me, so I'm going to add a bunch more elements and, play it out in more detail. But this is how I use Nocti. I get a human opponent that plays normal moves, not necessarily recommended by the engine. Thank you for watching this. If you would like to check out Nocti, follow the link in the description. As I said, it's a great tool. If you want to use all the premium features, and you can use what I just did for free partially, use the code Hanging Pawns to get a massive 64% discount. Let's go back to my game. So what I did was not queen d7 or queen c2 or queen d5. It was queen b3. Now, instead of queen d7, which is of course fine, this is a massive advantage, you also could go queen d5. Once the rook goes to d8, you go queen c4. I couldn't see a real point to that. I didn't really want to do that. Apparently that's fine. I was just looking at queen d7 and I couldn't think of a single move for black. Instead of that, I invested a very long time calculating queen b3. In my mind, the only solid try for black was queen a6, because when I played king f1, I'm vulnerable to, queen h1 checkmates, but it doesn't work because I just go rook d1, and on any queen c6, I have queen d5. So yeah, that doesn't work. So then I started looking at what if my opponent trades. And the line I was calculating went queen b3, a b3, a6, saving the pawn because now my rook is open. And I go rook a4. The idea behind rook a4 is b4, b5, just winning the pawn. So b4, rook a4, my opponent, I don't know what I do, probably make look for the king with g6 or h6 or f6. So one of those moves, b4, and now rook b8 is forced. And I was looking at bishop c5. So bishop c5, bc5, and my opponent doesn't defend with rook c8. He plays rook b1 check, king g2, rook c1. And they have a very active rook. And I thought, okay, but on rook c1 I play rook a5, I'm defending my pawn. My opponent cannot really approach with the king, and I'll go king g2. My king is already on g2 if they checked me on b1, and then I go king f3, e4, and enter the position. Let me just show you that. So he did end up taking, and I thought I was just winning. So a6 saving the pawn, rook a4. And as I said, my idea was b4, b5, just taking the pawn. If the pawn is left on a dark square, I'm going to win it eventually. So he played h6 making luft, I went b4, and now rook b8 is forced. And my calculation went bishop c5. Before I played queen b3, this was my calculation. Bishop c5, bishop c5, bc5, rook b1 check, king g2, rook c1, rook a5. Before I played queen b3, I thought this was winning. It is winning. Once I got to this position, I started changing my mind. Not only about that variation, but about another variation. So bishop c5, bc5, my opponent does not have to play rook b1 and go behind the pawn. They can go rook b5. And now I started looking at rook c4. Okay, I'm threatening to queen, but my opponent is in time. If c6, then rook b8, and if c7, rook c8, we're going to trade pawns. If we trade pawns, we enter the endgame I feared. So another line I was looking at, which is better than bishop c5, is bishop to d2. And this may be the best move, because I just keep both pieces on the board. The point is, in any endgame, I want to have the a and b pawns still on the board. Because without them, every endgame, bishop and rook versus bishop and rook, rook endgame and bishop endgame is very likely a draw. So I need to try to find a way to avoid trading pawns. Instead of that, I went crazy and I saw a variation which seemed very good to me. So bishops of the same color, in many cases, are winning if you have pawns far apart. So in this position, after having discarded bishop c5, mainly because of rook b5, but also because of rook b1, rook c1, and rook a5, which is winning for white, I found a way to enter a bishop endgame and thought I had a way to force to be left with the e-pawn and the h-pawn against one of black's pawns. And I thought that could be winning. So I played rook a6, bishop takes b4, and rook b6. Now this is absurd, of course. It forces a rook trade. And the thing about bishops of the same color is if your pawns are close together, so let's say I have these two pawns against this one, or these two pawns against this one, or these two against this one, or as was the case in the game, these two against this one, that's a draw. Because it's very easy to control those pawns. But had I been left with these two pawns against any of these pawns, I think I could have won. So the alternative after rook a6, rook b4 was, of course, not rook b4. My opponent cannot take rook takes b4 because I go check and here, and you just lose material. You have to play something like rook e4, but now I come in and it's very awkward. My king is more active. So he had to go bishop b4. The alternative was, of course, not trading rooks. Now, even going into a rook endgame would have been more promising. Now, the way I played it with rook b6 is just a dead draw. My opponent played very well. I tried to, do something, but there's just nothing I could have done unless I'm left with pawns on the E and H files. So that's what I'm trying to do. So in this position, my opponent threatens the pawn. I had to go h3. Now, if my opponent gets greedy and plays bishop h2, this is my winning chance. Their idea is, of course, to play h4 and win a pawn, but after this, I'm completely winning. After either h4 or just ef5 first. I think ef5, king f5, or gf5, it doesn't really matter. Let's say king f5, and now h4, and my opponent is busted, because now if they go bishop g1, I go bishop e3, and of course I'm in a king and pawn endgame. So this was the one chance I had. If my opponent gets greedy with bishop h2, I don't even have to take on f5. The point is I just go, I mean I would, because I don't want to have to complicate things, just takes. Whatever they take with, I go h4, the bishop's trapped, and it's the end of the game. With bishop h2 now. Can I go bishop f2? Bishop f2, if f4, yeah, then I go g4. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. But since in this position they played bishop c5, that was the end of that. Bishop g1. And of course I can repeat, but I don't want to repeat. So I tried g4. If I go h4, it doesn't really change much. Yeah, it's the same thing. So I went g4, and we went into this drawn endgame, played it out for about 20 more moves. I tried to trick him. I couldn't. It's really not easy to do. The only reason I played on is because it was a team competition, and I wanted to score a full point for my team. We did end up winning the match anyway, so this lost half point wasn't decisive, thankfully. In any case, this was my league game. Very good prep, very bad conversion. I have some stuff going on, so I'm a bit distracted, and I couldn't focus on the game completely. But I still think that playing queen b3 is just bad, and playing rook a6 is very bad. Playing rook a6 is just like I'm a complete beginner. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think about the game. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.